The shard of polished silver on the wall held a ghost. It was a woman's face, pale and wide-eyed, framed by a cascade of dark hair that fell like spilled ink over the collar of a familiar tunic. For a frozen moment, he believed an intruder stood in the wrecked laboratory. He tried to call out, to demand who was there, but the sound that left his throat was a high, breathy gasp. The ghost in the silver made the same sound, her lips parting in perfect synchrony. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drum in a strange new chest. He lifted a hand, and the woman in the reflection lifted a slender one to match. The realization crashed down not like a wave, but like the whole tower collapsing upon him. The face was his. The body was his. Panic, cold and sharp, seized him. He stumbled back, away from the impossible image, tripping over a fallen alembic that clattered across the stone floor. The sound was a violation in the sudden stillness. Breathing became a deliberate, painful task. He was a prisoner in a stranger's skin. Every instinct, every scrap of alchemical knowledge screamed at him to undo it. This was an imbalance, a volatile reaction that needed a counteragent. His mind, a fortress of formulae and theorems, raced for a solution. Reversal. He needed a reversal draft. He scrambled through the debris, his new, longer limbs feeling awkward and uncoordinated. His hands, smaller and more delicate than he remembered, fumbled with the ingredients. Iron root for essence anchoring, moon petal extract, a potent temporal catalyst, ground serpent scale for stabilization. He worked with a feverish precision born of desperation, his intellect a final, familiar anchor in a world turned upside down. The mortar and pestle felt alien in his grip. The heat from the burner warmed a foreign palm. He ignored it, focusing on the meticulous process, the one thing he still controlled. He measured, ground, and heated, his movements a desperate dance of old muscle memory in a new form. The mixture in the crucible turned a murky, hopeful green. He poured a measure into a beaker, his hands trembling. He drank it in one swift, bitter gulp, closing his eyes and waiting for the familiar pull of his old self, for his bones to shift and his skin to reclaim its proper shape. Nothing happened. A faint warmth spread through his stomach, and then it was gone. He stood, unchanged, the silence of the lab pressing in. He tried again. A different formula, one from a more obscure text, involving crystal dust and the dew from a belladonna leaf. The result was the same, a useless, inert liquid. The hope inside him dwindled with each failed attempt, leaving a hollow ache. The sun began to rise, its first thin rays piercing the grime on the tower's high windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. Exhaustion settled deep in his bones. He slumped onto a stool, the last of his frantic energy gone. He was defeated. He stared down at his hands, turning them over. They were not Elias's hands. They were elegant, with long fingers and unblemished skin. He touched the soft curve of his jaw, the line of his cheekbone. He gathered the heavy fall of his hair, its texture like cool silk. The panic had receded, replaced by a profound, terrifying quiet. This was not a curse to be broken. It was a fact, as solid and unchangeable as the stone beneath his feet. He was this woman. In the silence, a feeling stirred, something that had been buried deep beneath years of shy discomfort. It was not peace, not yet. It was a fragile, unsettling curiosity, a quiet fascination with the stranger in his skin. For the first time, he felt the true shape of his own body, the gentle weight of it, the way it occupied space. And in that terrifying, unprecedented moment, a single, clear thought rose above the ruin. This felt less wrong than he ever could have imagined. The tower had become a tomb with a view. For days, the shattered remnants of the laboratory served as a monument to her former life. Dust motes danced in sunbeams that illuminated nothing but failure and a terrifying new reality. But the last of the dried apples was gone, the water cask held only a hollow echo, and hunger was a simple, brutal truth that ignored the complexities of identity. She could not remain here. Elias was a ghost, but Alara was a living, breathing creature who needed sustenance. The thought sent a tremor through her. To go outside was to make this all real, to present this body to a world that only knew a reclusive boy. She found one of her master's old traveling cloaks, a thing of heavy, undyed wool. It smelled of distant roads and pipe smoke. The fabric felt coarse against her new, sensitive skin. She pulled the deep hood low over her face, the shadow a flimsy shield. The person in the polished silver basin was a stranger, a frightened woman swallowed by a garment made for a man twice her size. It would have to do. The descent down the winding stone stairs was a lesson in a new anatomy. Her balance was different, the gentle sway of her hips an unnerving rhythm. Elias had always clattered down these steps, a collection of awkward limbs. Alara moved with an unplanned quiet, her footfalls softer on the worn stone. The air outside the tower door was a shock. It was crisp with the scent of pine and damp earth, a fragrance Elias had known his whole life, but it felt amplified now, a symphony of smells she had never truly noticed. The path to Oakhaven was unchanged. The same gnarled roots clawed at the soil, the same moss clung to the shaded side of the stones, yet everything was alien. She felt the vibration of the world through the thin soles of her boots, a low hum of life that was both exhilarating and overwhelming. The village came into view, a cluster of timber and thatch nestled by the river. Smoke curled from chimneys in lazy ribbons. Once a familiar, distant sight from the tower window, it now seemed a formidable fortress of normalcy. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird in a cage of bone. She kept her head down, her world reduced to the cobblestones under her feet. The sounds of Oakhaven were a cacophony. The clang of the smith's hammer, the chatter of women at the well, the laughter of a child chasing a goose. Each noise was a sharp point pressing against her fragile composure. Every glance from a passerby felt like an interrogation. A nod from a woodcutter, a simple greeting Elias might have returned with a mumbled word, now made her flinch. She was a lie, walking through their truth. Her destination was the small market stall run by the baker's wife, a place of simple necessities, a loaf of bread, a wedge of cheese, a few root vegetables. She approached the stall, her movements stiff. She pointed to a dark loaf, her throat too tight for words. As she fumbled for the coins in a small pouch, her trembling fingers betrayed her. The copper pieces scattered across the wooden counter, a few rolling to the ground. A flush of heat crept up her neck. Before she could stoop to retrieve them, another hand, slender and smudged with dirt, gathered the coins with practiced ease. "Easy there," a voice said, low and pleasant. "They have a habit of running away." Alara looked up from beneath her hood. A woman with kind eyes the color of moss stood beside her. Braids of sun-streaked brown hair were woven with sprigs of lavender, and she smelled of crushed herbs and clean soil. It was Lyra Meadowsweet, the village herbalist. Elias had seen her from a distance, a figure tending her garden at the edge of the woods. Lyra placed the coins in Ilara's open palm, her touch brief and warm. Her smile was genuine, without a hint of pity or suspicion. "Are you new to Oakhaven?" Lyra asked, her gaze gentle. Alara could only manage a small, jerky nod. "Welcome, then." Lyra offered her a small bundle of chamomile tied with twine. "For a calming tea. The road can unsettle the spirit." Without waiting for a response, Lyra gave a slight bow and moved on, disappearing into the small crowd. Alara stood frozen, the coins heavy in one hand, the fragrant herbs in the other. It was a simple gesture, an act of unthinking grace offered to a stranger. Yet it landed in the hollow space inside her like the first drop of rain on a parched field. She paid for her bread, her hands steady now, and retreated from the village. Back on the path to the tower, the world felt different once more. The fear remained, a coiled serpent in her stomach, but it was no longer alone. It now shared space with the memory of a warm touch and the scent of chamomile, a fragile seed of hope in the vast, uncertain wilderness of her new life.
If you loved this video, give it a big thumbs up. Let me know in the comments what you want to see next, and smash the hype button to help my channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss the next video. You can jump to it right here.